discover more about the nature of reality and help create a better life for yourself and the rest of the planet. My name is Icke and I've created a process called Draw Your Reality. For more information, you can go to my website, nikkipalmer.com, and receive a free gift that I put together just for you.
Hello and welcome to the David Icke Connector Videocast, and a happy new year for 2019, which is going to be less than happy unless the human race gets off its freaking knees. Because events are happening, changes are happening, which I've been warning about decade after decade. And this is a pivotal year in terms of how far we are going to allow this imposition of global tyranny upon all of us. There are so many things that are planned to be pushed on this year, not least the cumulatively lethal rollout of 5G. But I want to concentrate today on the freedom that all other freedoms depend, and the ability to challenge these impositions depends. And that, of course, is freedom of speech, which is being assaulted in every direction that you can see. And what we're looking at with freedom of speech is a classic example of the disconnect, the vastly different opinion of the great majority of the human population, as opposed to those in power and those that dominate the microphones and dominate the social media tittle-tattle, trolling and abuse of people who have a different opinion to the norm. And what is that norm? It's the establishment's norm. We have a situation now where large numbers of people who call themselves liberal or progressive, who are the stormtroopers for the very establishment agenda of the very establishment they claim to oppose. We now have this joining together in mutual ambition of large numbers of people that call themselves progressives and giant global corporations, where they're all seeking to impose the same thing, and at the center of their gun sight is freedom of speech. So we have this situation where these gigantic corporations and the government agencies, brackets same thing, and what we call progressives are joining together to assault freedom of speech by branding it politically incorrect or hate speech or fake news, all these other labels they invent to justify censorship. While at the same time, the great majority of the population is shaking its head in despair at what is going on. and how basic human freedoms like the right to free expression and a free opinion are being deleted by the day. And unfortunately, and I do understand why, but it's still unfortunately, and it still can't go on if we want freedom to in any way remain. The great majority of people among the public all over the world who think this political correctness, this censorship, this inability to have an opinion about certain things, otherwise you just get abused. People who come from that direction are being intimidated into silence by this progressive fascistic mob and its giant corporation underbelly, foundation, means to impose its will, where you have people like Facebook and Google and Twitter and all these people, giant corporations, now controlling more and more of what people can and cannot say and see and hear, while the so-called progressives, fascistic mob, cheer. And 2019 has got to be the time when the majority, who are in despair increasingly at this, activate the backbone and stop being intimidated into silence. Because silence is compliance, and if we go on complying through silence, eventually there'll be no freedom left, certainly no freedom of expression. Because to understand what's happening across the great swathe of human society, which is what I do in the books, is to understand what the goal is. If you can understand what the goal is, then suddenly you can see the steps to that goal unfolding day after day, crystal clearly. And the goal in terms of freedom of speech is this, that there will come a time, and we're moving towards it so fast, where you will not be able to see or hear or express anything that is not acceptable to the authorities, which ultimately is a cabal network operating from the shadows. So when you realize that the goal is to shut off all other view, opinion that is not within the confines of what is deemed by the authorities acceptable, then you can start to see what is happening in front of our eyes as more and more and more reasons are invented to censor more and more of what people can write and say. And the whole foundation of this, of course, it affects the newspapers, it affects the mainstream media in general, but the core of it is the internet and internet giants. There is a reason, as I've explained long ago, why information and where people get their information from is increasingly, eventually, totally is what they want, but increasingly more and more and more is moving to the internet. It's because once it becomes digital, then algorithms can censor. You don't have to have people looking and reading and watching everything and saying, no, we're not having this. You just put in coding that certain words, phrases, subjects are automatically deleted or blocked through artificial intelligence. And that's what we're seeing now increasingly. And what we need to appreciate is that these internet giants like Facebook and Google and Twitter, they are not run by nice people. They are not nice people. Oh, they might wear a t-shirt for a bit of image. I'm one of you. And they might go, oh, yeah, I'm progressive. Oh, really? I am sorry, given what progressive has become. But it's all a front. They are not nice people. And they're not even the people ultimately running those organizations, because these internet giants lock back into the Pentagon, into the intelligence networks, and then further back into the shadows and this cabal which is orchestrating this whole deal. And so when they say, we're going to stop this because we're nice people and we don't want to see people upset, that's all crap. And they know it's crap. What it's for is just a justification for censorship on behalf of the masters that really call their shots. We have, this week, for instance, had this story. Google wins lawsuit, can continue to use facial recognition tech on users without consent. They're nice people, see? They care about your freedom. A federal judge has thrown out a lawsuit that alleged Google's non-consensual use of facial recognition technology violated users' privacy rights, allowing the tech giant to continue to scan and store their biometric data. The lawsuit, filed in 2016, alleged that Google violated Illinois state law by collecting biometric data as biologically unique as your fingerprints without their consent. The data was harvested from their pictures stored on Google Photos. And this district judge, Edmund E. Chang, sided with the tech giant, ruling that the plaintiffs had not suffered any concrete harm and dismissed the suit. So there's no concrete harm when your biometric data is being trawled by these arrogant people from your photographs. But you see, invariably the key stuff, there might be some lawsuits go against these giants in terms of money here and there. But in terms of taking your freedom away, you must be joking. It's exactly what they want. They're playing the system's game for them. That's what they're there for. And it says, as well as allowing Google to continue the practice, the ruling could have implications for other cases pending against Facebook and Snapchat. Both companies are currently being sued for violating the Illinois Act. They couldn't give a damn. That's what they're there to do. And here's another story, basically captures what I'm talking about with 2019. Mark Zuckerberg's 2019 resolution, more political censorship on Facebook. Oh, sits back in amazement, can't believe it. Facebook founder and CEO Mark Zuckerberg, he's running Facebook, yeah, as much as I am, promised to better prevent election interference and the spread of hate speech. Definition of hate speech? Anything we say it is. Neglecting to define either term in a blog posted on his company's website. Election interference. Who interferes in elections more than Facebook and what it allows to be seen and what it allows not to be seen? The hypocrisy of it. But of course it's hypocrisy, because it's following agenda. It's not trying to be neutral. It's not trying to be fair and just. Zuckerberg repeated his previous calls to suppress sensationalism and misinformation. Okay, so there's no mainstream media allowed to post on Facebook. There's no block on that, because it's all bollocks. It's all wind. It's all front to justify further suppression and censorship of those who are putting out information that's challenging the lies that we're bombarded with day after day. He also committed to promoting news from trusted sources, which he didn't list, but he means any mainstream source that's telling the official story of everything. Nice man, Zuckerberg. We've partnered with fact checkers. Yeah, system fact checkers, supporting the system's view of everything. That's why people like George Soros are connected to the fact checkers, some of them. In countries around the world to identify misinformation and reduce distribution. Yeah, exactly, mate. Reduce information that challenges that official norm, which eventually is meant to be all you ever hear or see. He did not list the fact checkers. No, I bet he didn't. But I've just described what they are. System servers that Facebook partnered with, or explain the methodology behind the selections. Well, I'll tell you what that is. Is it information that we don't want people to see or believe? Okay, go for it. Zuckerberg opted against making any mention of free speech. Well, he obviously doesn't believe in that unless it's his own. Free expression or the First Amendment in his post. First Amendment, says Zuckerberg. How do you spell that? And of course, the First Amendment for freedom of speech in America basically applies to the government. It doesn't apply, it bloody well should, to these characters. So the cabal has found a way of getting around the First Amendment, assuring freedom of speech, by doing their censorship through private corporations who say they're not included in the First Amendment. It is so bloody transparent. A set of Facebook's internal guidelines for political censorship, wait for this, oh dear, 1,400 pages in length, was leaked this week. And Zuckerberg concluded, I'm proud of the progress we've made. I bet you are, and I bet your masters behind the scenes are delighted with you. And this is not where it's meant to end. It's meant to go on and on until that is all that remains. And so what we're seeing is more and more excuses to censor people's opinion and people's information. They start off, oh, we've got to censor because we've got to stop terrorism being incited. But that's not where it ends. Oh, then there's fake news. What's fake news? Anything we decide it is. And then there's hate speech. What's that? Anything we decide it is, and we're going to constantly expand the definition of fake news and constantly expand the definition of hate speech so we can pull more and more people in to the censorship. Lasso. It is, like I say, so transparent, and it's heading daily towards this goal of people only seeing what the system wants you to see. And this is why people are being encouraged, pressured even, to become offended by more and more and more things. Because if you create a criteria where you've got to censor what people are offended by, then the more people you can persuade to be offended by more and more things, the more excuses you have to censor people's views, information, and opinions. And that is why we have political correctness in its ever marching, goose-stepping extremes. It's because they are manipulating the target population to silence itself. And it's got to stop. If people don't like it, and the vast majority don't, then they have to start, like I say, activating the backbone and using this. Because if we don't use this, we lose it. We are losing it. Once freedom of speech is trumped in importance by people being offended, freedom of speech is dead. Because you can get people to be offended by anything. And this is what is happening. We've had a recent ruling by the European Court of Human Rights that said that someone's religious feelings being hurt or offended is more important than freedom of expression. A massive crossing of the Rubicon in Europe towards the end of freedom of speech and the creation of that. Comedy is being destroyed by this. And where are the comedians speaking out? One or two, yes. Where's the majority? Oh no, they want to offend. Well, you're not a bloody comedian then. Comedy is a wonderful way of exposing the nonsense, the lies, the ludicrousness of those in power. And yes, we have this week outrage after Netflix pulls comedy show criticising Saudi Arabia. This is a comedian's show being cut for criticising with humour one of the most fascistic, psychopathic regimes on earth. This is how far we've gone. Netflix has taken down an episode of a satirical comedy show critical of Saudi Arabia in the country after officials from the kingdom complained. Oh, really? And? Fascistic, psychopathic, mass-murdering Saudi Arabia complains about being criticised? Oh, we'll take it down then. What are you doing? It sparked criticism, thank goodness, from Human Rights Watch, which said that the act undermined the streaming service's claim to support artistic freedom, which it clearly doesn't if it's going to do this. Human Rights Watch said artists whose work is broadcast on Netflix should be outraged, adding that Saudi Arabia has no interest in its citizens exercising democratic rights. But you see, for all the bollocks you hear from these corporations about how moral they are, how progressive they are, they're just servants of the system. What's progressive about shutting down a comedian for criticising a psychopathic, fascistic regime? For murdering a guy in another country by cutting him up? This is how far down the hole, the chasm of free speech destruction we have now gone. And there's a guide, very obvious guide, to what is the agenda of this cabal. And that is, are you allowed to have a contrary opinion? Or are you, for having another view of a situation or a subject, met with abuse and censorship. If the answer is yes, you can't have another view, otherwise you get abuse and censorship, it's the agenda. And I've been writing for a long time about the agenda of mass movements of people from one part of the world into another. And of course, the mass movement of peoples into Europe, mass movement of peoples into the United States. And this agenda can be tracked back, as I've done in my last book, Everything You Need to Know But Have Never Been Told, to at least the 1920s. This is not happening by accident. And of course, there are people that deserve help and deserve support who are genuinely fleeing wars and oppression, genuine refugees. But the vast majority, as study after study has shown, are not in that situation. And if you have an opinion on how this mass movement of people is affecting countries and communities, there is no free debate like, okay, well, look, this is what's happening. This is one of the consequences. Then you are met with machine gun abuse. You're a Nazi, you're a bigot, you're racist. Do people really think that billionaires like George Soros, who says that he doesn't take into account the social consequences of what he does, he's just there to make money, do you think he really cares, someone like that, about migrants? And yet, his Open Society foundations are absolutely at the core of manipulating so much of this mass movement of peoples. So there's an agenda. And the migrants are being manipulated just as much as the indigenous populations. And yet, you can't talk about this. Well, I am. Sod it. Without getting abuse. And this is not about racism. Personally, I'm a white bloke. Why? Because I was born in Leicester to a white family. I couldn't care less if I was brown, black, or orange with blue dots. It doesn't matter to me. Just a body. It's just a vehicle to experience this reality. But it's also about numbers. And it's also about the effect on people already here, of whatever cultural or racial background they may be. People sleeping in the streets. People who can't feed their families. People with kids going to bed hungry. How are they going to be affected in these parts of the world with a vast number of people coming in? You know who benefits from it? We're back to the theme. Giant corporations and the elite, because they can suppress wages of the poorest people. Oh, you won't do it for this? Well, these will. And where are the trade unions in all this? Oh no, can't be politically incorrect. It's basic mathematics. Where are they going to live? Where are they going to work? Especially as AI takes more and more jobs, and we've seen nothing yet. None of these questions are allowed to be addressed and debated. Excuse me. Because it's the agenda that this happens, for reasons I explain in the books. And thus, you wouldn't win a free and open debate. So what you do is you shut it down and make sure you don't have a debate. By calling anyone who questions your agenda racist, Nazi, or a bigot. Of course, the mainstream media go along with it because they're run by the same corporate cabal that owns all the others. And so we have another one, the transgender agenda, because that's what it is. Starts out with we must not discriminate against transgender people. Cool. Pushing against an open door with me. Discrimination against anyone is ridiculous. As I've said many times before. You know, like I said earlier, I don't care if I'm brown, black, Jewish, couldn't care less. It's just a body. And I don't care if people want to see themselves as another gender while they have a body of another gender. None of my business. But that is not what is happening, you see. That's the foot in the door. Oh, we've got to not discriminate against transgender people. Okay, fair enough. So let's get on with our lives then. And just not discriminate. Oh no, it's not enough. What it's become, what it was always planned to become, is a massive, massive and ever more extreme campaign. Not to stop discrimination against transgender people, but to confuse others, especially the young, about their gender who weren't confused before. And to do that, you have to stop debate and just abuse people who say, hold on a minute, I don't like what's happening here. I don't like the fact that more and more and more, in ridiculously greater numbers, are suddenly questioning their gender who weren't questioning it before. Obviously, there's a cause and effect here, and that's what was meant to happen. We've seen again, nothing yet. But you have to shut down the debate because you can't win it. You see, when part of your foundation of what you're claiming is that men and women are not biologically different, I mean, how are you going to win a debate with that nonsense? You can't. So what you do is you fire professors of biology who say the bloody obvious, and you intimidate the population into silence. So you push on your agenda unmolested, because although the great majority of the population are going, what the hell, this is ridiculous, I don't want this, they're intimidated into silence, so you have free reign, free run. We're having women's sport destroyed, with people in big male bodies who call themselves female taking part in women's sport. Who do you think is going to win the weightlifting and the wrestling? It's insane. And we should have the backbone to say so. Stupid needs to be called stupid. Ridiculous needs to be called ridiculous. And not, oh, it's ridiculous, but don't say I said so. Like I say, we've seen nothing yet. Here's a story from this week, and it's not the West, but it's where this is going. It's this. See, in countries, other countries where they are openly tyrannical dictatorships, like China and others in that region, they don't have to kind of be slightly more subtle, and it's just bloody slightly now, in pushing this agenda. They just introduce it. This is why you've got your Googles and your Facebook so together with China, because they're creating in China and these other countries what is designed to be here in the not too distant future. So, here's a story from this week. Vietnam criticized for totalitarian law banning online criticism of government. This is where we're going. What they're going to push more and more and more, for instance, is to ban criticism of mass immigration. Ban criticism of anyone within this whole transgender arena. This is where it's going. You start by just abusing people and abusing people into silence, and then you make it law. We've had Facebook this week, another story here, blocking and deleting people who are describing a alleged police killer as an illegal immigrant. Because apparently Facebook say calling someone an illegal immigrant is hate speech. But the guy alleged to have killed the policeman, who's already been deported and then came back, was in the country without documentation to be in the country. So what the hell are you supposed to call him? But it's all about silencing and stopping debate based on facts as we long entered, the post-fact society, where fact is no defense. Anyway, this story. Vietnam criticized for totalitarian law banning online criticism of government. Vietnam has introduced a new cybersecurity law which criminalizes criticizing the government online and forces internet providers to give authorities user data when requested, sparking claims of a totalitarian crackdown on dissent. The law, which mirrors China's draconian internet rules, came into effect on the 1st of January and forces internet providers to censor content deemed toxic by the ruling communist government. Vietnam's Ministry of Public Security said it will tackle hostile and reactionary forces, people telling the truth and exposing the government. But human rights groups said it was the authorities' latest method of silencing free speech, which of course it is. I mean, hello. The Vietnam government has intensified a crackdown on criticism since 2016, jailing dozens of dissidents. Think it's not going to happen in the West? You having a laugh? Spreading information deemed to be anti-government or anti-state, anti-elite, online is now illegal in the country and is using the internet to post false information that could cause confusion and damage to social economic activities, i.e. fake news, or what's claimed to be. Now, we need to come back to sanity. For instance, on the immigration issue, we surely need to accept that if you look at any racial or cultural group or religious group, I don't care if they're white, black, brown, whatever. I don't care if they're Muslim or Jewish or Christian or Hindu. I don't care. Take any group, any of them, and I'll show you nice people, decent people, genuine people, caring people, empathetic people, and I'll show you okay people, and I'll show you bloody psychopaths and criminals. And once we have a situation, which we have, where you cannot criticize someone because of their racial, religious, or cultural background, while you can say what the hell you bloody like about others, then we're in a tyranny. What I want to see is a world in which everyone is treated the same, that has the same rights, the same justice, the same right to an opinion, irrespective of background, colour, race, culture and religion. That is what being liberal, not in the political sense, God help us, but in the dictionary sense, that's what that is. Progressive is an inversion of liberal, the very opposite of what it stands for, and it's meant to be. The whole progressive is just a smokescreen for fascistic behaviour, masquerading as heart on the sleeve liberal. And we have a choice. Just the great majority of people, and you know, I travel the world all the time. I meet so many different people from so many different backgrounds. I can tell you, people in general are sick of it. They're tired of it. They're sick of being told what they can think, what they can say, what they can do by authority and the progressive mob of the authority. They're sick of it. So we have a choice. We who are sick of it can accept it. That'll be the bloody day. Or we can start refusing to cooperate with it. I don't mean being abusive to others for the sake of being abusive. I mean, that's what's coming at us, for goodness sake. That's what the progressives and the establishment are doing. I repeat myself. But it means when you have an opinion, to speak it. When you don't disagree with something, to say so. And if people don't like it, well, they can do the other bloody thing. Sick people who want free speech for themselves, but to deny it to others. So, we can go on as we are, being intimidated into silence. And that is a gimme. And not too far from now either. Or we can stop having it. We can stop being intimidated into silence and start speaking out. Now I know, my God, I've known for 30 bloody years, that it can be challenging to speak out, especially in the current situation, where your bloody job can depend on it. But no one said it was going to be easy. We've gone too far down the bloody road for it to be easy. But if we don't say en masse, we're not having it, and if you tell me what I can't say, I'll say it louder. If we don't do that, then one thing is absolutely for sure. That is going to happen, where we only see and hear what the authorities say we can see and hear. See Vietnam, see China today, and the West tomorrow. We're moving by the hour towards it. So if there's one thing, I feel like New Year's resolution that should be a collective in 2019, it is to speak our truth, whatever that truth may be, and then to have it debated by other people speaking a different truth, and we come to conclusions as a result. It's called maturity. It's called freedom. And to no longer be intimidated by the mob into accepting insanity and global fascism. We use it or we lose it.